she was like, why would Aaliyah tell him about cheating at all? Like, she was like, you don't give these niggas
Nothing.
nothing. Nothing. Because look what happens. They be hiding their own shit.
So when she spoon like a BB moment, which is like a beautiful black moment. Did we get any of those in this episode?
Black.
We have a chaotic vibe moment of the
Chaotic vibe moment. And you're watching Black by Reality.
Black by Baddies.
And those who love us.
Hello, you're watching Black by Reality. I'm Nicole Weaver, and we are covering season 5 of Love is Blind. I'm very excited to talk about this, but if you haven't seen us before, definitely subscribe if you're liking what you're seeing. Like this video if you like what you are seeing or hearing. We're also a podcast. And leave your comments below if you have any thoughts about our perspectives on this channel. We're also talking about Big Brother, and previously we talked about And Just Like That. My co-host for this series is Quita Tinsley. They, she are their pronouns, and Quita is a writer, strategist, pop culture enthusiast. We had Quita on before to talk about the finale of And Just Like That season 2. So if you saw that, you're already familiar. Hi, Quita.
Hi.
Hi. Okay, so I think just to get started, so new people can know where we're coming from, how did you start your Love is Blind journey?
Oh my gosh. It was the first season premiered in like 2020, right? It was like we were deep in like the being at home during the pandemic. And I love to just like watch shows, just like consume all of the media. And when I saw this, I was like, what is this? Because I'm not a big I'm not into The Bachelorette or The Bachelor or those type of dating shows, but I was like, this seems like some mess like that I'm really into. And so I started it and I haven't stopped since.
Yeah. I mean, same. I was like, what is this new show? What a wild concept. It was such a good concept for the time it was released, because it's like people are stuck in one place just talking, not even in the same room. Like,
right.
It's always going to be like iconic for that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I've been watching every season since, and I'm just so excited to be able to talk about this new season with you. Well, how we have decided to do this is that we're going to go by couples, because Netflix dropped 4 very big, like full of material episodes on us, and I think that's the best way to just like move through. So
yes.
all right, let's start with JP and Taylor, because we're just gonna get like the couple out of the way. So if you don't remember, JP is a firefighter. Taylor is a teacher. She actually teaches at like the kindergarten school he once attended. So Houston's a big place. This new season is in Houston, but that's actually an interesting coincidence.
Right. Yes. I was like, did she just say she taught at the school that he went to kindergarten at? Like, what?
Yeah.
I was like, they feel destined, kind of.
Exactly. I'm like, how much is that a part of like them having a connection with each other? So yeah, Taylor said that if she falls in love, like she really harps on, she believes if she falls in love with someone that you don't see, then you're most likely to love the entire person. What was really annoying to me was that Taylor decided on giving pet names. She called this grown man on international television Sugar Butt.
I literally exclaimed, not Sugar Butt.
What? Sugar Butt? Like, and he accepted it, so you know he was feeling her. And he just calls her back sugar, which is a perfectly normal thing to say. Yeah, he proposed. He was crying as he did it, so very in touch with his feelings. And they are the first ones we see actually have a reveal. How do you think the reveal went down?
I mean, I think, yeah, I will say also when he was crying, we can't forget that he had an American flag handkerchief that he was crying into.
If you've paid attention, he has a thing about red, white, and blue.
He does.
So yeah, that's his thing.
JP, the good old boy. I felt like I know we usually feel like all excited about the first couple, and I was like, I am not excited for them. Like, I'm happy for them, sure, but like I'm not really feeling them. And I also felt like at a certain point, it felt like she was overcompensating. Like she was being like, I love you, and she's like, that feels weird. And I was like, let's explore that, you know?
Exactly.
And like they were kissing, but it also seemed like it felt kind of awkward for her, especially, which I've heard in previous seasons. Some people have said it can feel weird. Like you have been talking to someone through a wall and then you have to like really match this person in front of you to the voice that you're hearing. But yeah, I feel like there are certain things that it does feel like they were kind of swept up. And so I'll be curious to see if they still stay as deeply connected once they're back out in the real world.
Yeah. At first glance, I was like, oh, this is going to be like the all-American white couple for the white people to like root for. Like there's nothing really offensive about them.
Right.
But the chemistry seems off. Like during the whole first glance and they're sitting next to each other, Taylor's like keeps trying to fill the void of silence, and then she literally says, I ran out of things to say. I hate that. I hate that. And this man could not save her. He would not throw her a line of any sort. So she was just like kind of floundering. And then he was like, she made a joke about her eyelashes falling off. And he was like, oh, so those aren't real? And I was just like, the way men do not have any knowledge about makeup.
I feel like she would be deeply, deeply concerned if her eyelashes, her actual natural lashes, were just like falling off of her face. And I can't remember her name from the previous season, the ballerina. That's literally all I can remember about her. They were set up to be, I feel like, a similar way, but then it quickly unraveled. So I'll be curious to see if something similar will happen, or they might just be like boring and happy and like steady throughout the rest of this, and everybody else will give us the drama.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Let's start with the most popular guy in the pods, Izzy. So Izzy had 3 girls at the very beginning. Lydia was feeling him, Stacy was feeling him, and Johnny. And, you know, let's talk about Lydia and Izzy first. What did you think about their whole interactions in the pods?
So Izzy. When Izzy is so interesting to me. I immediately knew that Izzy would choose a white woman. Okay. So I immediately knew.
What was the tail sign?
I think the way he engaged with Lydia versus the way that he engaged with the white woman was so interesting to me. Because I mean, obviously, clearly, there's so much footage we don't see, but I found it interesting that he was like, oh, I speak Spanish, I'm bilingual, and was like engaging with her about his actual culture, but he didn't really do that from what they showed to us with the white women, right? And it just felt like, and also that moment when she said, you're my number one, and he was like, oh, that's flattering. And then he stopped himself, and then he switched to say something else, and I was like, he doesn't like her.
He doesn't like her.
He doesn't like her.
And she was not seeing it whatsoever. She kept like showering him with compliments, and their like last maybe second to last date in the pods, he started cringing and was just like almost hiding his face. Like, this is the nightmare experience of being in the pods.
Yes. Yes, because it's like you hope that on the other side the person's like excited and happy, but in actuality, they could also be like, "Ooh, oh my gosh, not this person." Like, oh.
Exactly.
And poor Lydia is just so oblivious. I'm like, girl, you can't pick up. And I'm like, maybe I'm being biased, right? And like, because I can see him, right? But I'm like, even
Mm-hmm.
just listening to what he's saying, he
Mm-hmm.
wasn't saying anything that would indicate
He
that
wasn't
he was
reciprocating.
into her, right?
No.
And just like his energy with Stacy and Johnny was so different. Like he
Yeah.
seemed like he was genuinely into them and was
Yeah.
like opening up to them and being vulnerable with them about some of his own backstory, you know? I'm just
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, Lydia.
So he turns Lydia down, and girl was boo-hooing. She started asking, why? Why is this happening? Izzy was like, look, it's chemistry. Like, I am just vibing more with the other women. And it seemed like Lydia didn't even hear it because she kept asking why and if she's even worthy of love. And it's just like,
Right.
yeah.
Ooh, maybe you should be in therapy and not on Love is Blind.
Yeah, yeah. Because the fact that she went so hard in the paint and then doubling back, but we're gonna stick to Izzy's point of view right now.
Right.
So
And from what you just said around, like, did she even hear him? Because she went back in the women's lounge and she literally said, he didn't tell me why.
yes,
And I'm like, he literally said y'all didn't have chemistry. That's a reason, Lydia. Like, that's a reason.
exactly. And I noticed she stayed doing that because we're also going to talk about later how she retells what goes down, and she loves to either switch up some information or claim she has none.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
all right, so now we're down to Stacy and Johnny Johnny and Izzy got into, I guess, some deeper stuff. um and then Stacy over here, he's playing golf with her. Like, it just seems like they're just like having fun dates. And so it's kind of not surprising that he says Johnny's his number one, but that takes a turn when Johnny reveals, look, if people looked at my history, they would see a bunch of red flags. I was in a relationship with someone who had addiction issues, moved on, married someone else, and then that marriage unraveled when she found out that that person, her ex, died. Um, and so she kept reiterating that this person was the one love of her life. And that's when Izzy, I think, was like, what? You married a whole person you weren't in love with? And she even calls the ex husband a rebound. So for me, it wasn't shocking that Izzy was like, this sounds like red flags to me. But what do you think?
Like, she's being honest about who she is and where she's coming from, right? And like
Mm-hmm.
with the clarity to name the parts that don't make her look good, right? Because she could
Mm-hmm.
tell that story and tell it in a way of like the grief of finding out that this man that I loved broke my heart so much that I couldn't continue on in my marriage, and not mention that like actually the person who I married was just a rebound in my way of trying to get over, right? Get over the person that I was actually in love with.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I found it kind of refreshing that she was being honest about who she was.
Totally.
But I think for me, it indicated how insecure Izzy is. And it started to remind me kind of like of Shane in a certain way of, you know, if he didn't hear a certain thing that would make him feel very secure in that moment, he would just unravel.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot. It's a lot. Don't get me wrong. Because I was also curious if she had told him bits and pieces of her story before, because she had mentioned in her other dates, from what it seemed like, she had mentioned that she had been married before. She had
And
mentioned,
he's
and
been engaged before, to be
right,
clear.
right. So I was like, I felt like she had been honest about certain pieces of it. So I was like, is all of this overwhelming to you, or is it the fact that she's going on and on about how this other person was the only love of her life, which I felt like that was the issue, because he asked her something about that, like, well, are you still in like love with him, or like, you know, like, do you feel like you could love someone else, you know? And so I'm just like, Izzy, this was also 7 years ago. So, you know.
I have a different opinion.
Oh,
Yeah.
What is it?
My different opinion, because I saw some possible red flags with Johnny from the very beginning. Because if we remember, Johnny's like, yeah, my parents are looking for grandkids and everything. But then even my own mom was like, maybe you're not meant to be in a relationship. And I would assume her mom's not talking forever. She was probably on some shit of like, you need to be by yourself right now, given the choices you're making in partners. And you know, like, my family has history with addiction, so my first thought of loving someone like that, deep love of someone who's deep in an addiction, the thing is that person, like, addicts who are in the thick of it cannot love you back. They just can't. That's not the capacity that that mental illness has for you. So it's a little bit of like, sure, it's possible, like, she could be talking about, oh, I was deeply in love with this person from like who they were before the addiction, but it sounds like she was really rocking through it. And that's when the part for me is like, was this a codependent relationship? Were you really like the one chasing for something and not able to receive, and you're still, I think the one thing is really still framing that as like your one big love, instead of like what was like in you to try and get this person who's addicted, you know. That's the one thing. And like comparing that to a marriage, to someone who isn't addicted, and being able to say, well, that wasn't like the real stuff. I think my frame of thinking is like, will you actually feel like it's loving if someone was able to return the feelings to you?
Oh, wow. Yeah. No, that's definitely spot on. Because I feel like it became reflective of what was happening in the pods.
Yeah. Because I think Johnny doesn't know actually what pattern. She knows she has a pattern. I don't know if she knows what it is, though, because if we get to it. So Izzy's just like, oh, like, yes, it's an insecurity, but it's also like, who wouldn't be insecure of like, that's the thing no one talks about. Marriage, you would hope, is like, yeah, you're up there, you're professing to in front of all your friends and family, this is the person I want to have my life with. But like that person may be secretly being like, actually, this is a rebound. Right. And they're all here for marriage. I think it's reasonable that Izzy's like, oh shit, do you really take this shit seriously? I don't know. And so we know that Johnny tells Izzy, like, oh, I had a pattern of going for the safe choice. I dumped Chris. He would have been the safe choice. I could picture my life with him. He's boring. And Izzy just being like, no, thank you. And then she turns to Chris and say, well, I was going through the past where someone couldn't return the feelings for me, and I was chasing that, but you're the real stuff.
I was like, now Johnny. Now Johnny.
You think those men aren't going to talk and compare stories, Johnny?
I will say, this season was the first time I've seen the men really go in depth. I feel like in the past, it's also kind of felt like territorial because people knew that they were dating the same person. And so for Chris and Izzy to be like, oh, especially for Izzy to be like, well, like, I don't want to share something if you don't want to know, right? And then sharing, and Chris being like, that is interesting, because what she said the same thing, but flipped it. And
reversed it.
And so I think, Johnny got me good in the first half. And then in that moment, I was like, she's lying. And like, Yeah,
she
like
just wants somebody. I do think if you make it to the very end and you feel so close to engagement, that's when people are scrambling. And that could have also been part of it, of Johnny, of like, oh shit, I had two options. I'm coming up empty. Like, that was very interesting. So were you rooting for Chris to take her back or not?
No. I was like, Chris, if you don't dump Johnny, like, and I was so confused. I was like, why are they dressed up? Why are they dressed up? I was like, did the producers tell them to dress up? Why are they dressed up? Because I know he's not about to ask Johnny to marry him. So I was like, oh, is he about to propose to her? And I was so happy when he let her know, like, no, I have to choose me. I'm like, yes, Chris, choose you.
He said, I'm going to choose me. He's like, I want someone who's excited about me. Because, like, for her to say, well, I was going for the boring, is it boring or is it like, yeah, safe and like
stable?
There's nothing. He wanted you and you wanted him. And like some people are like, well, that's boring. Like I need a little back and forth. And that's why you're playing out some kind of history dynamic that you think that's how relationships are gonna go. And like he was supposed to just be okay with being called boring.
Right. And I'm like, also, Johnny, if he's boring and doesn't like you're not excited about him, that's okay. That just means you didn't find someone. So your time here is done. Like, because you were trying to get engaged to someone who you literally called boring.
Wild.
And dogged him out, actually. Well, didn't dog him out, but like kind of like drug their dating through the mud of like, yeah, I could see all this, but like he was the safe choice and I don't want to choose that. Only to later on go back to this man and be like, actually, you're the safe choice.
That's the thing about when these people are talking on this show. Okay, let's say you want to play the numbers game. What do you think is going to happen as you're like talking like that about them and you actually did get to convince him to propose? And you guys now have to like be, and it's always the same. They're always like, oh, I apologize. My life with Chris is so exciting now on that reunion stage, and everyone's gonna be like, I don't buy it, but okay.
Right. I'm like, y'all know, I don't think anybody else will be able to pull a Zach. Right. And I feel like Zach's situation with Bliss was so different of like, I'm like, no, Zach never talked down on his dating relationship with Bliss, which is why when he came back to her, she was willing to take him back because she was like, you weren't saying everything that I was saying. Right.
Yeah.
But in this situation, it's like, girl, you're trying to like talk out of both sides of your neck, hoping that these men won't compare stories. And they did. And also, right, I'm like, when this aired, Chris would see it.
Yeah. All right. So that leaves Stacy. And it's so wild because, yeah, he made it this far with Stacy, but he also gets caught calling her his number two. He's like, I'm going to see my number one first, see how that plays out, then go with number two. And when he pops into that, who's number one? Johnny.
Yep.
So, Stacy, they're gonna have a conversation about that. And Stacy doesn't seem to be like the bitch who's like okay with being number two.
I will say she might be okay with it because she does know she struggles with being vulnerable and talking about her emotions. And that was the biggest connection with Johnny and Izzy. So I feel like that might be his way of saving it.
Yeah, I think what was interesting is that Izzy did, when he was talking to Johnny, was like, this other girl actually knows me really well. So I was just like, so they know a lot about each other, and that's the relationship you feel like you know very well, but somehow you're very attracted to Johnny based on what then? I don't know.
Right. I was so confused because he named that him and Johnny went deep really fast, but Stacy. So I'm like, how did y'all get to know each other if y'all have just been having fun the whole time?
Yeah, I don't know.
I feel like he actually didn't want to say what you said the other day really freaked me out, and I don't know how to move forward with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, He
Right.
picks Stacy. They get engaged. They meet. What do you think of the engagement and seeing each other?
I mean, they seem to be into each other. I mean, I think as Johnny was saying, she doesn't think it's gonna last. I don't think it's gonna last either because I don't feel like they went deep enough with each other for it to be
Yeah.
like a really strong emotional connection.
I kind of rolled my eyes when Johnny said that. She was
Because she's just
like,
being a hater.
she is. She is. She was like, he'll never be happy with her, and she's the safe choice, just like Chris was my safe choice. And it's like, who said any of that? Like that is his number two, but also who said any of that? Like you have no clue.
Right. Like you haven't talked to Stacy. You haven't really and Izzy never called her his safe choice. He actually just said we have lots of fun and she knows me better than anyone here. So like you're
Yeah.
putting words in his mouth. I mean, granted, she is his safer choice. Like,
True.
putting two and two together if she was number two and like they have fun and he didn't want to risk it with his number one. But yeah, I mean, she's being a hater, but I'm like, sometimes people can be a hater and be observant at the same
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. I mean, Stacy was a sneaker. She was like, I am not gonna tell anybody who I'm feeling. I see all these girls with Izzy's name in their mouths. I'm gonna play it cool. And that was very weird when she made that bad poem. She rhymed Izzy's name with Tizzy, Wizzy, and Busy. And I
And
was like,
Fizzy.
why are we doing this? This doesn't seem like the way you would be hollering at a guy, but this is content, I guess.
I guess. And again, I feel like it speaks to like the cheesiness and the unseriousness.
Yeah, that's true.
I think it's just very interesting that he had all these like very deep things to say about Stacy. And I don't feel like Stacy has said anything very deep or emotional because he already named he likes a lot of reassurance. And so I'm like, I don't know if Stacy's actually capable of providing that type of constant reassurance because she's not very in touch with her emotions in that way.
Now, she did say before he proposed, she said that she never felt 100% about anything like this. That's like the closest. That's the warmest thing she said. But yeah, Izzy was excited. He was thrilled. He said he called her a bombshell when they saw each other, and he seemed to be very happy. So I don't anticipate looks being a problem, at least on Izzy's side.
No, I think it's going to be like the emotional reassurance and connection. It's going to be the thing.
Let's go for Lydia. So Lydia did not get Izzy. So instead, she doubles back to Milton. Milton is 24 years old. He's a tall baby. And all he wanted, I thought it was so cute, actually, their first date when he started talking about rocks for no reason.
Oh my gosh, I loved it so much. Like their nerdy conversation. It was so cute. So cute.
But she was not feeling it the minute the age conversation came up. And I hate when men do this, right? Because she asked, "How old are you?" He threw it back. He's like, "How old are you?"
Right.
Like, so you already anticipate your age being a problem. So I think Lydia's 31 and Milton's 24, and she says, "You're younger than my younger brother."
Yikes.
Immediately put into a different box until Izzy was like, no. Then she doubled back, which I hate when they do. It's such a bad look.
And at first I was like, oh, Milton seems like, I mean, I feel like in comparison, right? Someone like Bartiz, who immediately I was like, no, I'm not buying it. Well, he was 25, right? He was 25 and Nancy was in her early 30s. And she immediately was like, no.
Yeah, that's true.
But I was like, yeah, this feels like a no. But Milton at first, I was like, well, he's 24, but he does seem like he didn't seem like the type of guy who's like wilding, going out all the time. Like he didn't
he's a
seem
nerd.
Yeah, he's a nerd, and he didn't seem initially very immature. But as time went on, I was like, oh, he's emotionally like
absolutely
immature, or not immature, but like he isn't emotional at all. Like, ooh.
Yeah. I think he is in the way that like quiet boys are. Like he's the type that I would have dated, and it's like a little of like, oh, this is the first time you're talking about your feelings. Let me help you navigate that. And Lydia, being a ball of feelings, was like, I'm not new to this. I'm true to this. And I'm just like, part of me is like, baby Milton, baby Milton is not ready for Lydia. Lydia's gonna run him into the ground.
Right. And like, because at first it seemed like, oh, this might be a good pairing. Someone who's like very emotional with someone who's not very like, he's not able to express his emotions, right? He's very in his head. Like, but I'm like, actually, this is a horrible pairing because Lydia is so emotional. She is not able to hold space for anyone else's emotions because she's so emotional. And I think it all came to a head, later on, which I'm sure we'll get to. But I'm like, oh, this is why they won't work, because she will never, or not never, but currently she's not able to give him the space to process and get to the point of expressing his own emotions because she's so emotional.
Yeah. So Milton was like, they had a beach date and Milton was just like talking about, in my family, I don't think his family's close, he said. And he's, doesn't have a lot of practice of talking about emotions, but wants to. Lydia is just like, I'm always out here about my emotions. And she like also kind of talks about her disappointment and like not having Izzy. And I'm like, Milton's not the right person for you to be this confidant. And if he was older, he would know better.
I think so. This is where having done polyamorous dating, I'm like, I don't know. It gets tricky. And I feel like Love is Blind teeters on polyamorous. It's kind of like it's polyamorous dating in its own weird warped way, but it's like people are juggling multiple relationships at the same time, and everyone is aware of it, that you're dating multiple people. And so I think sometimes it can come up where you are processing hard emotions with someone else, and I think because they are within this container of they all know that they're dating other people, it can get hard, right? Like, like being honest of like, I'm grieving this other relationship with someone else that broke it off with me today. That's actually how I'm doing right now, And so it actually let me in on the fact that Milton is secure enough to not freak out when she was doing that. And like, so he does have like emotional capacity, and like, oh, okay, he's not like, her talking about this doesn't freak him out.
No.
But I think it was just kind of like, girl, talk about this with Aaliyah in the lounge and like, don't go too deep into this. But like, I think being honest that you're sad that you got dumped today is fine, but you're doing a little much.
A little much. Milton did open up about having spinal surgery in the past, and how scary that was. He also just said very matter-of-factly that he's not going to live very long because he's tall.
It's like, sir, I've been watching Criminal Minds lately, and he gives me very like Spencer Reid energy. It's just like spitting out facts all the time, but then also like, sir, this is very morbid, and like this is someone that you're trying to convince to date and marry you, and you're like, I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm gonna die early. I'm not gonna live long.
Okay. Wild, but I'm very curious what his sign is, because like it's giving either an earth sign or a air sign. He just
either Capricorn or Aquarius, and I say that as an Aquarius.
You know what? I'm actually gonna look real quick. This is the beauty of the Black Bi Reality podcast. Okay,
we need to know this.
This is her campus. who's doing this. Oh my gosh, Milton's a Libra.
Oh, he is an air sign.
He is an air sign.
Aww.
So yeah, facts, sensitive. Yeah. Lydia's a Virgo.
Ew, run. No offense to the Virgos. We're in Libra season though now, so.
Yeah, we are. It's coming up. My birthday. But yeah, I've actually done like 6 years. I say like a prison sentence in a relationship with a Virgo. So like yeah, it could have gone either way. Oh, yeah. What a mess. Okay.
Yeah, I was raised by a Virgo. Yeah.
We're gonna stop before the very end of Milton's journey because we gotta talk about Uche now.
Oh, Uche.
Oh, Uche. Uche, y'all, is an entrepreneur / I don't know if it was like
he's a lawyer.
That's right, and a lawyer. His whole thing is I'm blunt, I'm honest, blah blah blah. So Uche and Aaliyah, they bonded over being nerds. Aaliyah seems so dope. First of all, she's so beautiful.
She is. She's so beautiful. Oh, it has such good energy.
That's my thing. The best energy, like. Oh, okay. So yeah, she talked about she was like, I think an army brat. She was in Japan because of that. She wants to be an entrepreneur, so it sounded really good that Uche was one. And later on, they talk about how they both have done poetry and spoken word, and Leah has a guitar, and
they both have fenders. Oh my gosh.
Exactly. We got to get back into the community. And Aaliyah loves Love Jones. What are your thoughts of Love Jones? Do you have one opinion about someone or another? When they say my favorite movie, Love Jones.
I'm about to tell myself, but I've never seen Love Jones.
Okay.
Yeah.
I recently watched it for the first time. I was like, I have to get better on my Black cinema as an entertainment reporter. Right. I watched it. First of all, I was shook that Isaiah Washington was in it.
He is?
He is up in it in the friend group, and I was like, excuse me?
Wow.
The couple, yeah, they both do poetry, but it's a little toxic.
Yeah, I mean, she just gave me like your typical, I mean, I think she's like in her early 30s, right? But it gave me like very auntie type vibes of like my favorite movies, Love Jones. The poetry, the guitar. It was given very auntie type energy.
Our first bump. So they talk about what's a deal breaker. And I noticed that this is a trend with Aaliyah. Aaliyah, when she feels like something's going good, she's like, what could go wrong? Let me pop up something so it can confirm that something's going to go wrong, because they're getting along great. And then she was like, oh, I'm so scared. Tell me a deal breaker. And so Uche is like, dishonesty. And she's like, I feel you on that. And then she tells them, I cheated in my last relationship. It was 2 years ago. Never told him. And, eventually left. Uche's whole demeanor changes hearing this.
But it's not shocking, because the first thing I noticed about Uche is he's not a very warm person. Like, I think because he liked Aaliyah, he started to like warm up to her. But I was like, yeah, I'm not feeling Uche because I don't like the way he's like, his energy. Like he felt very kind of cold. And you're right, his energy completely changed and he got so cold with her, essentially very judgmental with her, and was like lecturing her. I mean, he was being honest, right? Like when he asked her, oh, did you tell him? And she says no. And he's like, oh, why didn't you tell him? And she's like, I didn't want to hurt him. And he's like, actually, you didn't want to deal with like the consequences of being honest about your actions. I'm like, that's true, but you're being so judgy right now. Like, I'm like, there's a way to have that type of conversation. And I don't think he was like holding it in a way with compassion, especially
Mhm.
if he likes her. Like, I'm like, but yeah, I was like, I don't like Uche. I don't like him. It was just a bit
Yeah.
much.
It was I I am for listen to yourself and listen to what people are saying and like truly, yeah, keep going in and ask questions. But the problem with how Uche handled this is that it wasn't just asking questions. He had to like label. He said, "So you're a recent cheater." And
Mm-hmm.
now Netflix titled the whole damn episode a black girl woman being called a recent
Recent
cheater.
cheater.
And she
Mm-hmm.
was like, I wouldn't put it that way. And his face was just so, but isn't that the truth? It was just like, Uche. Like, and now we're going back and forth on whether 2 years is recent or not. Like,
Right.
it's just all up for opinion. It's like if you don't get the information and then just do what you will, but instead he just kept going in,
Right.
poking a little. And sometimes Aaliyah did say something that made me cringe because she was like, "Look, the sex was bad," and he had a very valid question. Why didn't
Right.
you just end it? And she was
Right.
like, well, I didn't want to give up the good things about the relationship and I didn't want to be alone, which
Mm-hmm.
just is a common theme in these first 4 episodes is these people do not want to be alone. Therefore, they're making some really bad decisions. And some people are rightfully, I think, running scared because they're like, if you are doing this just to be alone and not because you're feeling me,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
leave me out of it.
Right. Because I think for me, I'm like, but I feel like, I mean, we don't, there's a lots of footage we don't see, but I would love to see people be like, oh, well, what has your healing journey been like since
Yeah.
that? Like, have you been in therapy? Have you been working through that? You know, because I think there is something to be about being honest about who you are and who you have been. And people do have the capacity to grow, but are you doing the work? I think one way was she was being honest and upfront about like sex is very important to me. Like, are you a sexual? We see that, right? So
Yeah.
it's like she's trying to be very clear and explicit. Like, if you are not a very sexual person, then long term this isn't going to work. So like, let's not do this. And just the way Uche was so judgmental and the comparing, like being like, I mean, I cheated once, but I was 18 and it
And
was
I
only a
kissed.
kiss.
And yeah,
Like,
like good for you. Good
right.
for you.
And that doesn't mean you haven't done other toxic things.
Yeah. Yeah. Leah's crying. So she goes back. She cries to Lydia. Lydia's like, oh, I see myself in you. We're the same woman. Oh, honey, if he, and like, okay, I guess Lydia killed it with this. She was just like, he cannot move forward with you thinking he's above you.
Mm-hmm.
That's like his ego. That's something with him.
Mm-hmm.
True, true.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like y'all are gonna have to like figure this out. Even when Aaliyah was leaving, Uche was like, "Why is Uche's son?" Now I need to know because how he was acting, it was
Mm-hmm.
giving a little bit of Libra of like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna go in with these tough questions and everything, but then I'm gonna be like, "What's the other side?" And he's like, when she's heading out, he's like, "You didn't need to tell me that." So you do get cookies for that. I'm like,
Right.
Uche, we're gonna be here all night. You trying to figure out.
It's like, Uche, why do you start with the compassion? Because then we could still sit here in this conversation, but she's now running away crying because you just
Crying.
went in on her. Like, what are we doing?
What are we doing? So after Lydia comforts our girl, she goes back in. Uche apologizes, or she basically says like, you were really judgy, and he apologizes, and they basically decide that they're going to move forward.
Well, at first, he was doing his lawyer
Oh,
BS of like,
absolutely.
did I say that? I'm
Yeah,
like, let's
because he was
not
like,
argue
yes.
semantics because it was your freaking tone.
And she immediately said, yes, you
Yes.
did.
Literally.
And then he's like, oh, well, then I'm sorry. Aaliyah tells Lydia that she's actually scared and she doesn't want to be hurt. And I'm like, are y'all just crying on this couch every day?
Yes.
snuggling up. They're like almost inside each other. This is how I snuggle with my partner.
Right. Snuggling.
It's like the biggest couch, and they're just like two pods on the very end.
Together.
It's like not surprised that Aaliyah later is like, is she my homie and everything? Because like that's what they've been doing this whole entire time.
This whole time. Just bearing their entire soul on this couch together.
Yes. I think it's that Aaliyah's like really putting it on then when she goes back to Uche and is like, look, things are going well and I am scared. Which is interesting trend. And that's when, you know, she was like, I'm just gonna trust you. You've been like so honest with me, because his whole thing is I'm honest and blunt. And then his guilt starts popping up and he's like, actually, I have something to tell you. I have an ex here and found out on the first day she recognized my voice, and it's Lydia. Cut to black. Produced by.
Honestly, Nicole, the moment he said, actually, I have something to tell you, I yelled out, nigga, what?
Yeah, exactly.
I was like, I know you did not sit here on your high horse going in on this woman about cheating just to turn around and be like, actually, I haven't been honest with you about something.
And did. Yup.
Sir.
Team honesty. When I first watched this and I told Aramide what happened, she was like, why would Aaliyah tell him about cheating at all? Like, she was like, you don't give these niggas
nothing.
Because look what happens. They be hiding their own shit. They be hiding it real well. So don't give them a goddamn thing. And I was like, damn,
it's like she gave him so much while getting so little from him, right? So little. Because then we go on to see, like, Lydia's able to share so much with Aaliyah about Uche that clearly Uche hasn't shared himself. And I'm like, girl, you were vulnerable with this man and told him that you cheated on one of your recent exes. And then he gets to turn around after judging you and making you feel like shit to be like, actually, I dated the woman you've been crying into her bosom this whole time.
I don't think she harped on that enough.
No.
Quite honestly.
She didn't.
She didn't. So the next episode, we actually see the interaction, which is like, producers, y'all ain't shit, because this was like a whole, I'm trying to think of a movie twist where it's like, oh, you thought this whole movie was about this one thing, but like, let's back it up and show you a scene we never even saw. I was like, where am I right now?
It was giving me like Real Housewives of Atlanta when we find out from Phaedra and Portia. It was like them who started the rumor. It was like, wait, what? And the producer's like, yeah.
We had this in the vault the whole time. So Lydia and Uche, they go into the pods on the first day because everyone has to date each other to rule each other out. And when he says Uche, Lydia's like, fuck, because what other Nigerians in here named Uche gonna be here? So she starts listing all of his info. She was like, oh, you're an entrepreneur, here's your last name. Uche's just like, who is this? Who are
you?
And Lydia was like, you playing right now. And honestly, I'm kind of like Team Lydia on that, because you don't hear this Puerto Rican ass.
To me, I think seeing that moment, it was like, oh, so Lydia's life is just like this, right? When like she be dating men and she be like giving her everything to them. And then like they literally dated for months. She knows his dog. She knows all these things about him. And he's like, I'm sorry, who is this?
Let it never be me. Let it never be me. away these vibes.
The Aquarius in me, I would have never actually let on that I knew who it was. I would have clocked it in my mind and been like, I think this is Uche, but I'm actually just gonna say my name and go through this whole thing and let him remember who I am, or we're just gonna pretend like we don't know each other.
Ooh.
And that's my toxic trait, and I can own that. But I would rather go through that than what happened in their interaction.
Uche, and I think it's a joke, but you tell me if you thought it was a joke. Uche said, "Is this a sign?"
Right.
Lydia took that shit and ran. And she was like, "Oh my god, it might be is a sign. Like, let's go ahead and date." And Uche immediately was like, "Oh, we're not gonna do that. That makes this whole thing not genuine. And we're just gonna have to like go separate ways." And Lydia was like, "Oh, well, how are you going to feel if I get engaged to someone else?" She wanted Uche to be jealous so bad.
Right. I'm like, Lydia, this is the same man where you just played 21 questions with, and he
didn't
did
think
not
of
know
you.
who you were. He's not going to care if you get engaged and married to someone else.
She wanted that to not be the case. So, okay. So I guess they decide we're not going to ruin this for anyone because we don't, I'm assuming the agreement is we're not going to tell anyone so no one can put the pressure on us for like what we look like or anything. But it's like, so was the friendship between Aaliyah and Lydia natural, or did Lydia seek Aaliyah out and try to pump her for information to keep tabs on what Uche was doing?
Okay, that immediately was my thing, right? I was just like, so was her friendship with Aaliyah genuine? And a part of me, at first, I was like, well, maybe it is, but I'm like, I don't know. Because then everything that she was saying to Aaliyah that in the moment didn't make sense started to make sense. And again, Lydia is a little delulu. Because she's like, I'm trying to be nice here. She's a little delulu. Because she's like, he has a blind spot because you're so much like me. And I'm like, Lydia.
I'm like, Lydia.
This man didn't remember who you were.
Yeah. Is it that they're really alike? Or like you guys, you want it to be that? Like, okay, they both were like, oh yeah, we both love poetry and stuff like that. Whatever. But it's just like, you guys have differences. Like this is very weird.
Like Lydia is very loud and like emotional, and Aaliyah is clearly like cries, right? Like she is an emotional person, but I'm like, their personalities are pretty different and distinct to me. So I'm just like, I don't know what I feel like Lydia wants to feel that way because she wants to make the argument that Uche should like still like her because he chose a woman just like her. But I'm like, you and Aaliyah are not just alike.
No, you're not. This is when I'm like, Aaliyah, slow the hell down. Because she's sitting here like, this girl was like my sister in here. Cool it. I don't remember. Did I just imagine that she was like, oh, she would have been the aunt to my kids?
No, she said that. She's like, this woman will be the aunt to my kids. She gives the best hugs I've ever had in my life. She holds my hand. I was like, Aaliyah, are you in a relationship with Lydia as well? Like, did you fall in love with Lydia as well? Because I'm like, in actuality, you've known both of these people the same amount of time.
Same amount of time, and they were both scheming on you, low key. Like, what are
they
you talking
both knew
about?
something you did not know.
That's why I was like, this is so sinister because this is how she feels about both of them. Right. So yeah, so she goes back and she tells, and part of me is like, oh, Leah, do not do this. But she goes up and she hugs her first. And she was like, he just told me. And Lydia's like, you know. And she just starts, I think, crying. Like, which she the way Lydia cries sometimes, it's like is this to get out of something? Like a little bit. It's like, now I'm in the position of comforting you instead of focusing that you've been lying to me. And then she starts like saying, oh yeah, well, I'm so proud of him. He picked a good woman who's like me. And I'm like, this is weird. Flags, flags, flags. And then Aaliyah says she's scared and she has trust issues. She doesn't want to be looking over her shoulder with these two. Lydia's like, I would never.
Oh, you would never.
Oh, you would never?
Okay. Even though you were hoping that Uche would agree to y'all continue to date each other.
And how she puts it when she retells the beginning to Aaliyah is, we were considering starting over.
I'm like, no, you in your own mind were hoping that y'all could consider starting over.
And he shut that down. But you didn't say he shut that down. So, and then she immediately starts oversharing about the dog, about how he hangs out with his friends, who she's met. And after, Aaliyah says, I want to learn everything on my own. So now Aaliyah goes back in the pod. She's amped up. And she was like, Uche, what the hell is this? She's telling me you tried to, like, you thought about starting all over. He was like, nah, that ain't true. And then she reveals, well, you guys just fucked 3 months ago. Because this man was lying down. First of all, this man was lying down. He was trying to take it easy when the block was hot, which is audacity. And he sat there and he was like, well, this is happening more so to me than it is you. And she was like, y'all fucked 3 months ago. That's when he stood up. That's when he sat up and he's like, oh, they're talking.
Because I guess maybe he did it. I'm like, sir, when Aaliyah gave you that whole monologue about how close her and Lydia were, that's when you should have been. Because also I felt like he was downplaying his relationship with Lydia in a certain way, which he could have experienced it in that way to some degree, right? But he was like, we dated for a few months, I ended things, like, and that's where it was. But why did you not tell Aaliyah that y'all had sex recently? Because you allowed for Lydia to tell it, and now that it's coming from Lydia, you seem shady once again because you weren't forthright in the beginning. Now you all shook because the block is extra hot right now.
Yeah. That's when he knew he fucked up. Ladies and femmes, do not tell these niggas shit.
Nothing. Don't tell them anything until they bare their soul to you, and then
don't even need to then.
Right, you can determine where you want to go from there.
Okay, it took a while because we're seeing everything happening. The end of episode 4, we're getting so much of Stacy and Izzy. We're getting so much of like Lydia and Milton. And then when we finally, and it makes a lot more sense now because now we can get back to Lydia and Milton. So I think what happened during this time is that Aaliyah obviously left. So she knows now she probably has to tell Milton at this point. So she tells Milton. Milton looks shook. He's not saying a lot, but he's like covering his face and just like shaking his head because this is wild. And Lydia just can't let him. She's just like, I you're everything to me. She starts like really throwing everything onto him and shit, and he's just like, can I get 5 minutes? This girl immediately starts to crying and was like, but are you gonna come back? And it's like, don't even do that. Don't you dare. You're 30 something years old. Hold it in. And he's like, yeah, I'm gonna be back. She goes back. It's not Aaliyah who comforts her.
That makes so much sense.
Exactly. It's
Aaliyah
Stacy.
was gone. Oh,
and I was like, I have never seen these ladies interact ever. And I love how Stacy handled it because I think Aaliyah, they were crying buddies. So it's like, oh, we're gonna hug, we're gonna cry. Stacy was like, you're a grown woman. You knew You held this shit from this man, and he asked for 5 minutes. So you're gonna stop the crime and give
Right.
that man 5 minutes.
Because it's a lot of information to process. And I think, again, I'm like, neither Milton nor Aaliyah went in the ways that they should have on the respective people that they were dating. But I think Milton, so then it started to make sense to me why Uche was like really trying to grill Milton at one point. I'm like, this boy ain't talked this whole time about who he's dating. Like, he clearly does not want to engage in this conversation with y'all. And it felt odd to me that Milton or that Uche was like, you don't have to get married. And I'm like, you don't even know how serious or not he is with Lydia to be making that type of comment. But then I'm like, oh, he has a history with Lydia. And I feel like he knows Lydia, he's witnessing Milton. He's like, this is not gonna work. So he's like trying to be like,
Is it? And like, I have a little question. Is it like kind of Uche at this point trying to get his lick back? Is it Uche knowing who Lydia is and it's just like, yo, you don't have to do this?
Yeah.
But then here's my thing that also is very weird is that when Lydia and Uche finally say everything, they almost are on the same team, double teaming on Aaliyah, because he's like, well, Lydia's a great person. She should be like your friend and everything like that. And Lydia's also like, Uche's a great person. Like, they're not saying anything negative. Things change once the sex comes out. It's just very weird energy.
It is. And like, I don't know if Aaliyah was putting it together, but it was like both of them weren't telling the full story. Yeah. Right? Because the way Uche described it was like, we dated for a few months. I ended things. It just wasn't working for me. I couldn't give 100%. Then Lydia actually doesn't even talk about the original breakup. She just says like, I do want to say I did see him in January and we had sex and all of that. And then she's saying that she ended things in February. And so I'm just like, are you saying
did she say that?
She said that. She said that to Milton, I think.
Oh, okay. Because I'm thinking Lydia told Aaliyah like she didn't really know why it ended, I think, at some point. And it's like, what is going on?
Right. Not she didn't know why it ended. Is that the same she didn't know why in the way that Izzy stopped dating her when he clearly gave her a reason?
And it's also wild for Aaliyah if she really decides to like move forward with this of like, oh, so Uche is not just like a guy you dated like sometimes, or even it was just sex. It's like, no, he was with me at a very vulnerable time. Yeah, I'm not trying to look over my shoulder because I feel like something's gonna happen.
Right. Because it's like, y'all dated, you broke up, and then you had sex again while you were exes recently. Like, Aaliyah's fear around having to look over her shoulder is actually very valid.
So valid. She is so valid for that. So okay, so Milton comes back. Milton and Lydia come back to talk. And yo, I think Milton's questions was literally trying to find an out.
It was
like him doing what Aaliyah does sometimes. Because he was like, well, what if I want to go and play Wii with my friend?
At 4 a.m. Am I going to have to ask your permission? Like, is she your mom? What if my job tells me I need to move to Argentina?
Yo, and she didn't even let him finish that sentence. She's like, I'll pack and I'll go. Remember, I have a remote job. I can go anywhere. And he was like, oh my God, I'm not getting out of here. I'm not getting out of here. And he says to her, well, I'm wondering if I should take a risk. Now marrying your ass is a risky business.
This is your answer. If you're not like, yeah, let's do this shit, even if you're Delulu, right? If both y'all are both delusional and you're like, yeah, let's do this, that's actually kind of what it takes. But if you're going back and forth and being like, I'm a risk taker, like, oh, are you a risk taker? I'm like, no, you shouldn't be doing this. The fact that he said he's overthinking.
Yes, that's my thing. okay, if you ever feel like you are overthinking things in an emotional situation, just go. Because you are actually internally fighting. You know what you want to do and what makes sense, and you are fighting against yourself and losing.
Right.
Before he even gets down on the knee, he still has his head in his hands. And then he's like, I don't know how to do this. And he gets his big ass up, gets down on his knee, and he's like, okay, I'm down on my knee. And she's like, oh my God, you're down on your knee.
I'm standing up.
I'm standing up. And, you know, he asked, and Milton, I was riding for you. I was good with you. I was like unproblematic. I just want to look at my rocks and my microscope king. Fix his mouth. Being a nigga. Saying, will you be my Puerto Rican wife? Yo. Can I get one season? One season where y'all black men don't have to make things weird for us black women, because you can be black and Puerto Rican, but I think he knows.
He knows.
He knows.
It's like, it really ain't gotta be like this.
It don't gotta be like this.
Like, how did we get here? How did we get here?
How did we get here? You're not supposed to be here. So she says yes, obviously. Now Uche's like, oof, I don't know what's gonna happen. I would still like to leave with Aaliyah. He goes into this pod. For some reason there's a notebook there, and they kept looking at the notebook, but it doesn't come into play at all.
And he like moves the notebook and puts his own notebook under it. And I was like, sir, I feel like that's
no.
Exactly. Like, clearly she wrote a note, because I'm like, why is this notebook in here?
Yeah. So Uchi's like, hey, Aaliyah, hello. No one. And it took so long. They have this heartbeat sound going. It's like, why is there no one? And then they're like, no one's on the other side.
Uche, Aaliyah has chosen to leave the experiment.
And he's just sitting here looking like Boo Boo the Fool of, oh. Now he goes back with his face broken to these other men, and he's like, she gone.
Just like, I think what was wild to me was the fact that Uche underestimated the hurricane that is Lydia.
Yeah, because he's just like, she told you, I feel like I'm in a cage over here. You get to move about in your thing, but this girlie is in my face talking about your dog. So actually I have it worse. And like Lydia scared the hoes.
She did. Yeah. And then like she's trying to process this, and she's like, and then you're like, oh, if you want to know anything, just let me know. And she's like, actually, I don't want you to tell me anything. And then you choose to what? Tell her everything that you know about this man. Just like rapid fire.
And like, it's like, it feels like an ego thing, because what was the point? It could be like, oh, I have been holding all these things in, but it's still like, girl, just to let you know, I know everything about your man. And it's like,
and that's what I didn't like. Because it was giving me very that, like, I know him. I know his dog. His dog goes crazy for me. He likes the toy that I gave him. His friends like me. And I'm just like, I don't give a damn.
This is my thing. It's like, if Aaliyah and Lydia ever get into a fight and she did move forward with Uchi, would Lydia be the type to turn around and be like, well, girl, I knew your man first? Like, it just feels like I'm seeing bad things down this road.
What's annoying is like that thing of like, again, like Lydia just is not like getting the reality of the situation that she's in. So she's like trying to paint this picture for Aaliyah that they were so this, they were so that. But then on the flip side, you see the clip. This man couldn't even recognize your voice through a wall. He describes your relationship as you dated for a few months. Like, I'm like, he was not that into you, sis. And like, not to like devalue your relationship, but like, he clearly does not want to be with you.
if they continue this friendship, I'm sure Lydia would slip up and say something and be like, what do you mean by that?
Right.
It sounds like you still like my man. So, but, you know, one thing I do want to ask is, do we have a BB moment? Because I try to do this with all my shows. A BB moment is a beautiful Black moment. I know we're hard pressed because we don't come to Love is Blind for that all the time. We would love to see it, but there was a lot more mess.
There was so much mess. So much mess.
I'm going to say, and like, people have their own feelings about Love Jones, but the fact that we got Love Jones mentioned this season as part of a potential love story, I was like, that's maybe I'm grasping.
No, I mean, I love it. I love it. I mean, I think mine is like a very, very minor detail, but I love how much Aaliyah loves snacks. Like, if you like go back and watch, like, Aaliyah keeps a snack on her. Like, in that moment where she tells Uche she cheated on her ex and she comes back into the lounge, she's holding on to a can of sour cream and onion Pringles as she's bawling her eyes out. And I'm like, yes, sis. And she took it from the pod with her into the lounge because she wanted them chips.
Yeah.
And she's like, and someone literally had to take the chips out of her hand. And I'm like, yes. Yes, you better snack.
Do we have, I mean, I don't think we have any known bisexuals in the cast, but I usually ask for a chaotic bi moment. Lydia? Not to drag my community. This is probably but the chaos, it was starting to become a little thrupply.
It was. It felt like Lydia and Aaliyah and Uche, and then Uche and Lydia were. It was like giving very queer, chaotic, messy triangle.
It's given that. So I don't know how it's going. And the teaser does show that we do see Aaliyah again with a different do. I really loved that she came in with twist.
Oh, yes. And I love in the clip she has like her natural, like her fro. I'm like, oh, she's such a goddess. I love her so much. She's so beautiful.
So beautiful. So yeah, that's what we have. Is there anything else you want to say about these 4 episodes, the season? What you hope to see coming up next?
I mean, I have to say, when they dropped that little teaser with Johnny after the Ultimatum reunion, I was like, was it the Ultimatum reunion or Love is Blind after the whichever one? I was like,
probably Ultimatum.
Yeah, I was like, is this going to be kind of boring? I don't know. But then these first 4 episodes, they did not disappoint. I was like, this is some mess. This is good. This is going to be juicy. I'm like really looking forward to the conversation between Uche and Aaliyah. I wonder, with Lydia, with her no longer being stuck in the lounge with Lydia, will they have a chance? Like, will she see him and be like, this man is fine. I'm going to try to see if I can make it shake. Or will she be like, this is too messy for me?
Yeah.
I mean, the moment where we see Izzy in conversation with Lydia, I was like, okay, guess everything isn't good in paradise with Stacey. Interesting.
Yeah. We'll see what the rest of the journey is and what's going on with Aaliyah. It's like, where in the world is Carmen Sandiego?
Right.
Our girl's now on the run.
Right. And I'll be so curious to see what Lydia and Milton's dynamic will be like in person. We see a lot of clips of them kissing, but I feel like it's going to be very interesting.
It's going to be very interesting. Very interesting indeed. Well, we're going to be back. So we film on Saturdays. You can check. I guess we're going to keep Sundays as our release. Yeah. So do that quick turnaround. I hope you guys subscribe so you can see our future thoughts on the rest of the season on this channel. We're also covering Big Brother 25. I'm doing exit press for that. And I will eventually be bringing back TV to table with Jordan. We just have taken a break from cooking for a second. Something else that I'm doing is that I am back to writing. I'm writing for Collider. So I'm actually writing about Love is Blind. I defend Aaliyah's choice to ghost. Basically. I'm team communication, but this is the one time. So if you want to check that out, I'll put the link in the description. Quita, is there anything you want to plug or what you're up to?
You can follow me on IG at hello_Quita. And yeah, that's about it for now. But I'm hoping to like really get it back into YouTube. I have like a YouTube channel that I would like to revive. So maybe this will inspire me to do that.
Yeah, I'll drop the link to that also in the description. So yeah, thank you guys. Hope you guys stay tuned. And yeah, whether we're rooting for mess or love, we'll see what the rest of Love is Blind Season 5 is giving us.
Yes.
All right. Bye.
Bye.